Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Devoted to Death, Santa Muerte, the Skeleton Saint, 2nd edition, by R. Andrew Chesnut, narrated by Timothy Andrés Pabon. Publisher's note: in this audio edition, you may hear references to visual elements present in the print and ebook formats of the book. Forward. Santa Muerte, the scythe-wielding skeleton saint from Mexico, a favorite bête noire of the media on both sides of the Mexico-U.S. border, and the seductive object of devotion for millions around the world. Few scholars know her better than Dr. R. Andrew Chesnut. This second edition of his seminal work represents 5 years of travel, intimate conversations with devotees, and in-depth fieldwork seeking to pull together a few of the loose threads and unanswered questions that remained when the first edition was published. I think you'll find that many of the mysteries still lingering around the origins and implications of this surprising folk saint are well covered in the illuminating updates found in this book. And what's more, you'll discover some of the rather unpredictable developments that have occurred as the fastest-growing spiritual tradition in the Americas has spread around the world. Her triumphant rise has not been without tragedy. 2016 saw the murder of the husband of the pioneering devotee Doña Queta outside the shrine whose presence marks the center point for the public growth of Santa Muerte's following. At the same time, Santa Muerte Internacional in Tultitlan celebrated its 9th anniversary, and under the leadership of another pioneering devotee, Enriqueta Vargas, it has expanded beyond Latin America with the coordination of sister sites in Dallas, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, Queens, New York, and the United Kingdom. There are never any easy answers when it comes to death, and the folk saint that has stepped into the role of representing the ultimate end is no exception. 5 years since its first edition, Devoted to Death remains the only comprehensive and scholarly work to explore Santa Muerte's conflicted place in contemporary culture. It was this distinction that originally drew me to look into Chesnut's research. Watching her from afar since 2005, the increased media attention on a death cult gaining popularity in Mexico City kept me checking the news regularly for more information. Little was forthcoming until Chesnut's book burst onto the scene, marking a turning point for both Santa Muerte and those interested in learning more about this mysterious matron of the marginalized. Chesnut's sensitive approach to the beautiful girl avoids the salaciousness found in so many attempts to account for her surprising presence in popular culture over the past 16 years. The mainstream media is not alone in forcing her multifaceted iconography into the limited category of narco-saint or criminal religion. Scholars are just as ready to pin her with labels that fit pre-existing prejudices more than they do the complex and often contradictory roles she plays for devotees who come from all walks of life. Celebrities, lawyers, police officers, and government officials are as likely to be found within the diverse ranks of her following as are the marginalized groups more commonly associated with her tradition. When Devoted to Death was first published, the most detailed reports available came from military and Justice Department analysts, forensic experts specializing in religiously motivated criminality, and folklorists framing her within the context of Mesoamerican spiritual traditions. Chesnut was the first to account for all of these aspects, and at the same time to situate her within a wider contemporary context and examining her place in the global spiritual market, an approach that deftly anticipated and laid the groundwork for understanding the explosive growth we have seen in the last 6 years. I can comfortably say we, because shortly after I discovered Chesnut's work, I contacted him to do an interview for The Revealer, the online review hosted by New York University's Center for Religion and Media, which led to an invitation to both of us to participate in a panel discussion at the Morbid Anatomy Library in Brooklyn. After our meeting, we quickly developed the website skeletonsaint.com to provide a space to present real-time analysis and up-to-date coverage on important insights, news items, and testimonials related to her tradition. This digital immediacy is something that has become a powerful driver in Santa Muerte's monumental growth. Popular social network sites like Facebook provide an interface where devotees from around the world can meet and discuss and share devotional images, altar photos, prayers, and daily miracles. Also, savvy devotional leaders like Enriqueta Vargas can reach out beyond the confines of their local power base to connect with a wider audience that would otherwise be unaware of their presence. This has also changed the way in which scholars of religion interact with these traditions, and Santa Muerte has provided a perfect testing ground for radical approaches to digital ethnography and religious studies. Digital devotional images have become one of the hallmarks of Santa Muerte's growth. She is a master of mimetic culture, redefining concepts of sacred space as her devotees enter into an idealized interaction with her through photoshopped portraits, altar images, and offerings. It has been a powerful example of the changes in religious scholarship that she represents to find that many of the images created for skeletonsaint.com have become fair for redistribution and reformatting as devotional pieces by her ardent devotees. Some of the images express iconic imagery related to offerings that would be included in a physical altar. Others focus on devotional phrases and short prayers. These images, with their colorful appearance and sincere devotion, are drawn from the active tradition itself, and not the overactive imaginations of critics, and show very clearly how the media has misrepresented the very personal relationship her devotees have with this controversial center point for their faith. Of all the devotional leaders who have emerged since Santa Muerte stepped into wider circulation, Enriqueta Vargas has been the deftest in navigating the growing market of interest, and one of the most focused on bringing a greater social consciousness into her public presence. Vargas's diplomacy has extended the presence of Santa Muerte Internacional, SMI, from its base in Tultitlan across the Americas, including groups as far north as Queens, New York, and as far south as Colombia, and she has even reached out across the pond, where one of the first public UK devotees, Michael Calais, is now working under SMI's interpretation of Saint Death's iconography. Many of the new developments that are covered in this second edition come under the auspices of SMI. With Vargas at the helm, SMI has sponsored weddings, overseen funeral rites, conducted exorcisms, and coordinated a prison outreach program. Through Vargas's efforts, Santa Muerte has become a focal point for a spiritual tradition that rivals more established religious groups in all areas of the spiritual marketplace. The most important marker for this is in the realm of the miraculous, where Vargas's son Jonathan, the slain founder of SMI, has become the first figure to be elevated as a saint within another folk saint's tradition. Although she has been labeled a folk saint, Santa Muerte exists in the diverse marketplace of contemporary religion, and she has successfully adopted and adapted elements of charismatic evangelical practice, propensity gospel tropes, New Age metaphysics, practical occultism, and digital kitsch, along with influences from Afro-Caribbean and Afro-Latin traditions. In the United States, she's been comfortably co-opted within the growing interest in alternative religion and neo-paganism, and she is becoming a favorite for spiritual seekers searching out exotic inspiration close to home. Irresponsibly pigeonholed in the media as a premier narco-saint, the popular movement orbiting around Santa Muerte's iconography actually paints her as a polar axis for positive thinking. Within the continuous stream of digital devotional images dedicated to her, La Santísima Muerte emerges for her devout as a powerful patroness of prosperity, prosperidad, abundance, abundancia, health, salud, peace, paz, good luck, buena suerte, and blessings, bendiciones. One could easily say that she's becoming a self-help guru as she moves fully into the public sphere. One of the clear signs of her fluidity can be seen in the fact that across the United States, Walmart sells T-shirts adorned with her iconic image. While they are not tagged with her name, The same illustrations included on them can be found in Mexico and Latin American markets across the United States, directly associated with her cult. Even more telling is the recent discovery that a Walmart in Athens, Georgia, has discontinued its inspirational book section, once home to works of popular Christianity and prosperity gospel favorites such as T.D. Jakes and Joel Osteen. However, the shirts bearing her likeness are still available in the clothing section. No matter how far she moves into the public space, however, the question of what can a gringo know about La Niña remains a legitimate challenge to those who would divorce her from the complex environment of Latin America. Culture and language are intimate partners, and no amount of translation can capture the power of Santa Muerte as she lives and breathes on her native soil. This is not to limit her to Mexico, as she is born from the diverse spiritual landscape of the New World, and as shown by the growth of her tradition, anyone who approaches her can quickly enter into a powerful relationship with the Godmother. However, those who approach with the assumption that they can adapt her to their own understanding will quickly find themselves in the midst of a living tradition that changes with the swirling tides of culture adapting to the needs of her devotees, with little regard for comfortable orthodoxy. While the effort of leaders such as Enriqueta Vargas has strengthened the popular devotional tradition as a contemporary faith beyond the stigma of narco-culture, it also highlights the fact that the tradition as it existed prior to La Niña's association with the contemporary popular cult and the more obscured variants on the margins of the law will always remain elusive. Yet even as she enters a more domesticated stage of her development, Santa Muerte emerges from the streets, prisons, and violent borderlands. She is not safe, and she is not comfortable. She is death, and death is change. Devoted to Death is a very personal undertaking, and Dr. Chesnut and I are inexpressibly grateful to all of those who have opened their lives up to us as we continue our exploration into the growth and development of this complex and intriguing tradition. We've been humbled, challenged, provoked, and enlivened by our research in ways that I doubt many other scholars have experienced or can imagine experiencing, and we are thankful for this opportunity to share with the global community an icon of faith that brings to light so many different facets of the contemporary world. It is a mark of distinction that the first edition of Devoted to Death has become a favorite, not only for scholars interested in the tradition, but also for devotees around the world. Without the trust, time, valuable conversations, insights, and support of the diverse community that seeks solace in her patronage, this second edition would not be possible. D. Metcalf. Acknowledgements. This book wouldn't have been possible without the collaboration of numerous individuals and support from my university. First and foremost are the tens of devotees who freely discuss their faith in Santa Muerte with me. Before beginning to conduct interviews for the first time, during the summer of 2009, I was unsure how I would be received by devotees who, for a number of reasons, might be suspicious of a gringo researcher. My fears, however, were quickly allayed, as one Santa Muertista after another candidly talked to me about their devotion to the skeleton saint. Their high level of cooperation is due in part to the collaboration of the cult's founding godmother, Enriqueta Romero. Doña Queta, as she's affectionately known, graciously allowed me to interview scores of devotees at her famous Mexico City shrine. As the pioneer of the cult of Saint Death, she also shared valuable information on the founding and development of the cult with me. My stepson, Eric Martinez, took many good pictures at the shrine in Tepito. Also in Mexico City, Enriqueta Vargas, the current preeminent Santa Muerte leader and head of Templo Santa Muerte Internacional, graciously opened her temple doors to me on many occasions. The novelist and environmentalist Homero Ardigis and his daughter Eva, an accomplished filmmaker, candidly discussed their observations about the cult in the Mexican capital. In Morelia, Michoacán, a number of individuals made invaluable contributions to my research. My nephew Roberto gave me a first-hand account of devotion to Saint Death in the state penitentiary where he works as a guard. At Guillermo's Esoterica store, Guillermina was a treasure trove of information on the cult in Morelia and Michoacán in general. She generously allowed me to interview her clients in the shop, and she even encouraged some of them to talk to me after purchasing Santa Muerte products. On the outskirts of town, a Saint Death shaman, Vicente Pérez Bramos, gave me a detailed tour of his home shrine, Morelia's most elaborate, and shared the most original myth of the saint's origins that I have come across. My brother-in-law Gerardo kindly lent me his car for my Santa Muerte road trip through southern Mexico during the summer of 2010. On Michoacán's Pacific coast, in the port city of Lázaro Cárdenas, 2 other family members aided me with my research. My sister-in-law, Angelica, graciously allowed me to interview her dental patients as they sat in the waiting room before their appointments. A surprisingly high percentage of her patients were either current or former devotees. My nephew Alfredo accompanied me to several shrines, both in Lázaro Cárdenas and Morelia. Here in the United States, many people helped bring the book project to fruition. In Los Angeles, a Santa Muerte shaman, Guadalupe Santiago, gave me unfettered access to his temple and revealed new rituals to me. The interim Los Angeles Police Department chief, Michael Downing, took time out of his busy schedule to meet with me just 2 days before Christmas. My former graduate student, Scott Priddy, a law enforcement agent, provided me with rare photos of Santa Muerte altars in Houston. Several colleagues across the country collaborated in significant ways. Candy Brown made useful comments on the manuscript. Philip Jenkins suggested some catchy book titles and emailed me every bit of relevant news just minutes after they appeared on the internet. Frank Graciano provided me with research contacts in Argentina and helped me contextualize Saint Death. Based at the University of Georgia, my chief collaborator over the past few years, David Metcalf, has joined me on the front lines of research on Santa Muerte via Skeleton Saint, our website of news and analysis of Saint Death, now in the foreword to this 2nd edition. In Queens, the pioneer of devotion to the Bony Lady in New York City, Arely Vasquez, graciously invited me to her annual fiestas and shared her story of devotion with me. Down in New Orleans, Stephen Bragg, the devotional pioneer in the Crescent City, gave me a personal tour of his unique shrine and also recounted his path toward the pretty girl to me. My parents, Robert and Janet Chesnut, also provided useful commentary on the manuscript, and my father came up with a euphonious title. I am deeply indebted to them for their unconditional support throughout the years. My sister graciously allowed me to include her own experience with the white girl in the book. Across the pond, the Santa Muertista Michael Calais, the first devotee I ever came across in the United Kingdom, gave me a personal tour of his home altar in Brighton. At Oxford, my esteemed editor, Cynthia Reed, enthusiastically supported the project from its inception. Generous research support was provided by the College of Humanities and Sciences at Virginia Commonwealth University, where I have taught religious studies since 2008. All translations from the Spanish are my own. Finally, my deepest gratitude to my wife, Fabiola, who collaborated in so many ways, most importantly by taking hundreds if not thousands of photos of the cult and its devotees. I thus dedicate this new edition of Devoted to Death to her, Mi Dama Poderosa. Introduction. Blue Candle. Insight and Concentration. Beckoned by the Bony Lady, aka Saint Death, some people become devotees on their own initiative, actively seeking out Santa Muerte upon the recommendation of friends or family members. Others receive an unexpected call or visit from the skinny lady, La Flaquita, one of her many nicknames, in which she offers to solve their problems. Such was my own path to the Skeleton Saint, a surprise visit in the spring of 2009. For several years, I had been doing research on the Virgin of Guadalupe, Mexico's patron saint. I decided to study her as I neared completion of my 2nd book. As a specialist in the religions of Latin America, I wanted to tackle a monumental topic for my next book project. As Empress of all the Americas and Queen of Mexico, The Mestiza Virgin towers over the region's religious landscape. Of course, fellow researchers and devotees had already written many books and articles about her, but I was sure there was still much to say about the world's most important avatar of the Virgin Mary. But as the semesters passed, first at the University of Houston and then at Virginia Commonwealth University, my enthusiasm for the project waned. The kind of passion that had driven my previous research and writing just wasn't there, and I wasn't sure why. It was in this context of research malaise in the early spring of 2009 that the Bony Lady, La Huesuda, another common nickname, appeared on my laptop and summoned me to contemplate her. More specifically, it was the news of a military assault against her on the U.S.-Mexican border that ultimately led me to replace Guadalupe with a figure who at first glance seemed to be her antithesis, a sort of anti-virgin. In late March, the Mexican army demolished some 40 Santa Muerte shrines on the Mexican border with California and Texas, mostly on the outskirts of Tijuana and Nuevo Laredo. Army bulldozers had leveled the very same roadside altars that we had passed numerous times on our long road trips from Houston to Morelia, the state capital of Michoacán, and my wife's hometown. I started making the 18-hour drive in 2006 and had noticed that on each subsequent trip, the number of makeshift roadside altars on the main highway linking Nuevo Laredo and Monterrey had multiplied. The crude, concrete shrines, often obscured by the SUVs and pickups of the devotees, were our signpost on the return trip, letting us know that the Texas border was just a half an hour or so away. What on earth had Saint Death done, I wondered, to deserve such an aggressive desecration of her holy sites at the hands of the Mexican government? As images of her shrines reduced to rubble flickered across my computer screen, I had an epiphany. My flagging passion for research on Guadalupe would be replaced by a quest to understand why the Mexican government had declared Santa Muerte a virtual enemy of the state. More broadly, I would seek to discover why, in less than a decade, devotion to her had grown so much that her popularity now eclipses every other saint in Mexico except St. Jude, patron of lost causes. Never one to balk at an epiphany, I turned my back on the Virgin and decided to stare Saint Death straight in the face. What follows is my attempt to explain why devotion to Santa Muerte has transformed from an occult practice unknown to most Mexicans to the fastest-growing new religious movement in the Americas, which includes millions of devotees in Mexico, Central America, the United States, and beyond. Death encountered. Some will have come across the white girl, La Niña Blanca, another popular sobriquet, on trips to Mexico, while others will have encountered her in TV series such as Breaking Bad or American Horror Story, or on votive candles in supermarkets in Los Angeles, Houston, New York, and other cities that have large Mexican immigrant communities. But most, I suspect, are meeting the godmother, La Madrina, also a common moniker, for the first time. I ask those already familiar with her to bear with me as I briefly introduce her to those who have not encountered Saint Death before. As her name would indicate, Santa Muerte is a Mexican folk saint who personifies death. Whether as a plaster statue or on a votive candle, gold medallion, or prayer card, she is most often depicted as a female Grim Reaper, wielding the same scythe and wearing a shroud similar to her European male counterpart. Unlike official saints who have been canonized by the Catholic Church, folk saints are spirits of the dead considered holy for their miracle-working powers. In Mexico and Latin America in general, folk saints such as Niño Fidencio, Jesus Malverde, Maximón, and San La Muerte, the Argentine counterpart of Santa Muerte, command widespread devotion and are often sought out more than Catholic saints. The great majority of folk saints, unlike the official ones, were born and died on Latin American soil. Niño Fidencio, for example, was a curandero, folk healer, in early 20th century Mexico, while Pedro Batista led a religious commune in the backlands of Brazil during the same period. Thus, folk saints are united to their devotees by nationality, and often by both locality and social class. A Mexico City street vendor explained the appeal of Santa Muerte to her, saying, "She understands us because she is a battle axe, cabrona, like us." In contrast, Mexicans would never refer to the Virgin of Guadalupe as a cabrona, which is also often used to mean bitch. Where the skinny lady differs from other folk saints, including the skeleton saints of Argentina, San La Muerte, and Guatemala, Rey Pascual, is that for most devotees she is the personification of death itself, and not a deceased human being. The very name Santa Muerte says much about her identity. La Muerte means death in Spanish, and is a feminine noun, denoted by the feminine article la, as it is in all Romance languages. A few casual observers of the white girl have erroneously attributed her female identity to the feminine gender of the word la muerte in Spanish. However, the fact that both the Guatemalan and Argentine saints of death are male figures shows that there must be other explanations for the saint's female identity. In any case, she and the Argentine San La Muerte are the only saints in the Americas that actually include the word death in their names. For devotees and non-believers alike, it is obvious that the hollow stare of the skeleton saint is the gaze of death. Santa, the first part of her name, is also revealing. It is the feminine version of santo, which can be translated as saint or holy depending on the usage. For example, Espíritu Santo is translated as Holy Spirit, while Santa Barbara becomes Saint Barbara. While some observers refer to the White Sister, La Hermana Blanca, yet another popular nickname, as Holy Death in English, I think Saint Death is a more accurate translation, which better reveals her identity as a folk saint. Santa Muerte is first and foremost an unofficial saint who heals, protects, and delivers devotees to their destinations in the afterlife. The word holy expresses her sacredness, but lacks the personification implied by the term saint. Moreover, the inverse, muerte santa, refers exclusively to the Christian concept of having a holy death, which involves dying amidst one's loved ones with the proper prayers and ritual ideally administered by a priest. Having said this, there is a variant of her name, Santísima Muerte, which is best translated as Most Holy Death. The difference here is the Spanish superlative suffix ísima. Devotees tend to call her Santísima Muerte in their rituals, such as the Santa Muerte Rosary. Thus her name, Santa Muerte, and her myriad nicknames neatly reveal her identity as a female folk saint who personifies death. Those who speak Spanish will know that the San, an abbreviation of the masculine Santo in San La Muerte, denotes the male identity of the Argentine saint. No introduction to Saint Death would be complete without a brief consideration of one of her most unique characteristics, her gender. While folk saints abound in the Americas, and other supernatural skeletons work miracles in Guatemala and Argentina, Santa Muerte stands alone as the sole female saint of death from Chile to Canada. Her asexual skeletal form contains no hint of femaleness. Rather, it is her attire and her hair that mark the saint as female. Devotees and manufacturers of mass-produced images of the Bony Lady usually dress her as a nun, the Virgin, a bride, or a queen. Red and black medieval tunics, white bridal gowns, and flowing, bright-colored satin robes normally cover her skeletal body, leaving only her bony hands, feet, and face exposed. Like her male cousins, San La Muerte and Rey Pascual, the godmother typically sported a bald skull until the past 5 years or so. Now, however, following the lead of the great devotional pioneer Enriqueta Romero, affectionately known as Doña Queta, most devotees adorn their statuettes with wigs that are usually brown or black, but also come in blonde, red, and the occasional pastel color. In fact, several enterprising Santa Muertistas run thriving businesses across Mexico, where devotees bring their statuettes to be dressed and coiffed, so they look like the pretty girl, La Niña Bonita, yet another sobriquet. But more than just a pretty girl, Santa Muerte is most important.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?